It's a question that hangs in the air of our time, whispered in conversations, debated on screens, echoed in the quiet of our own reflections. Why did women stop being hard to get and become, in the eyes of some, difficult to want? For generations, the game was clear. A woman's value was tied to her scarcity, her mystery, her availability. The goal was to be a prize carefully guarded, to be gotten. Her power was in the chase she permitted. But that was a power borrowed from the rules of another. So women stopped playing that game. We stepped out of the arena of got and into the vast, uncharted territory of being. We claimed our voices, our ambitions, our autonomy, our complexity. We said, I'm not a destination. I am a universe. And in becoming that universe, whole, sovereign, and self-defined, a shift occurred. We moved from being hard to get to being what some would call difficult to want. But we must ask, difficult to want by whom? You see, when a woman is no longer arranging herself to be easily acquired, she becomes a mirror. She reflects back a man's own capacity for partnership, for equality, for embracing a narrative he does not solely author. That can feel challenging. It is no longer about winning a yes, but about being worthy of a parallel eyes from a complete human being. The woman who is difficult to want is the woman who wants things for herself. She wants her career, her peace, her solitude, her friendships, her changing mind. She wants a love that does not ask her to shrink. She wants a partner, not a proprietor. This perceived difficulty is simply the sound of old expectations breaking. It's the sound of a woman who will not trade her authenticity for affection. She has looked at the script that said, be lovable, and has instead chosen to be real. And real things, powerful, vibrant, nuanced things are not always easy. They are not fast food, they are a feast. And not everyone has the appetite or the courage to sit at that table. So this is not a lament. It is a celebration. The transition from hard to get to difficult to want is not a failure of femininity. It is the triumph of personhood. It means a woman's primary relationship is now with her own soul. Her question is no longer, do you want me? But do I want this? Does this honor the life I am building? To the young women here, your so-called difficulty is your integrity. Protect it. To the men here who are evolving, see that difficulty not as a barrier, but as an invitation to a deeper, more substantial connection than the old game could ever have offered. We have not become difficult to want. We have become impossible to ignore. We have stopped being a trophy to be acquired and have become a truth to be reckoned with. And that, my friends, is not the problem. It is the point. The old paradigm was a carefully choreographed dance with very specific steps. A woman's value and perceived power were inextricably linked to the concept of scarcity and selective availability. Her role was to be the prize, the object of pursuit, whose ultimate worth was confirmed by the sustained effort a man was willing to expend to jet her. This dynamic granted a certain kind of influence, but it was a borrowed power entirely dependent on playing by rules she did not write and within an arena designed by others. Her mystery was a performance, her hardness to get a strategic calculation. The entire framework was built upon the foundational idea that her fulfillment and social standing would be achieved through successful acquisition by another. This made her a destination in someone else's journey, a final chapter in a story she did not author. The goal was to elicit a proposal to secure a commitment to be chosen. In this system, her complexity was often a liability, her ambitions a potential deterrent, and her independent desire a force to be subdued or hidden. She curated a version of herself designed to be ultimately attainable, but only after a respectable chase, a version that would fit neatly into the predefined narrative of partnership that society offered. This was the compact, the understood game for generations. It was a game of hints and withheld permissions of timing and tact. We're saying no until the right moment was the pathway to a sanctioned eyes. Her identity was relational first and individual second, if at all. The seismic shift occurred when women collectively began to step off that stage. We ceased to be participants in that particular theater and instead turned our gaze inward, beginning the monumental work of building a self that existed prior to and outside of any pursuit. We moved from the territory of being gotten to the vast and uncharted landscape of simply being. This was not a minor adjustment in strategy. It was a revolution of the self. We claimed our voices not just to say yes or no to others, but to articulate our own visions. We claimed our ambitions not as charming quirks, but as central pillars of our lives. We claimed our autonomy, our right to our own bodies, our own time, our own finances, and our own solitude. Most importantly, we claimed our complexity, the right to contain multitudes, to be strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, driven and nurturing, all within the same being. This transformation, this move toward wholeness, fundamentally changed the equation of desire. When a woman becomes a complete universe unto herself, she is no longer a puzzle to be solved by an outsider. She is a sovereign state issuing her own declarations of independence. The old markers of desire, based on the thrill of the chase and the satisfaction of capture, became irrelevant. The new dynamic was not about pursuit and acquisition, but about recognition and resonance. The power was no longer in the withholding, but in the full, unapologetic manifestation of self. This is the core of the shift from hard to get to difficult to want. The latter formulation, often used as a critique, actually reveals the discomfort with this new sovereignty. A woman who is not arranging herself to be easily acquired is inherently more challenging to a mindset seeking a straightforward transaction. She cannot be won over with a prescribed set of actions because what she seeks is not victory but partnership. She offers not a challenge to be overcome, but a presence to be met. The difficult lies in the fact that she is now the author of her own story, and a co-author must be invited, not a conqueror who takes the pen the moment a woman steps fully into her own sovereignty. She becomes more than a participant in a relationship. She becomes a profound and unflinching mirror. This is the core of the new dynamic, a source of both profound connection and, for some unsettling, discomfort. In the old paradigm, the reflection she was asked to hold was simple and flattering, reflecting back a man's prowess as a pursuer, his patience, his ability to provide and protect. Her role was to receive his effort and, in her eventual acquiescence, validate his journey. The reflection was one-dimensional and designed to affirm. Now, the reflection is panoramic and honest. A woman who knows her own mind and cherishes her own peace reflects back a man's genuine capacity for true partnership. She reflects his comfort with equality, not as a fashionable concept, but as a daily practice. She reveals his ability to engage with a narrative he does not solely control or direct. When she speaks her truth without filtering it for palatability, she shows him his own ability to listen, not to solve or counter, but to understand. When she pursues her purpose with passion, she illuminates his security, or lack thereof, in sharing the spotlight and celebrating a success that is not his own. This mirror does not lie. It shows a man his own emotional landscape, his resilience, his vulnerabilities, and his willingness to grow. For a man rooted in traditional scripts, this can feel profoundly challenging, even threatening. It moves the goalposts from external achievement, winning the prize, to internal development, being a person worthy of a whole person's choice. The question is no longer, can I convince her? But am I the kind of man she would choose to walk beside? This requires a deep and often unfamiliar introspection. The mirror shows him that he is not auditioning for the role of a hero in his own story, but for the role of a co-star in a shared production where the script is written by two hands. Her very wholeness asks a silent, powerful question of Hin, can you meet me here? Can you engage with my intellect without needing to dominate it? Can you respect my solitude without reading it as rejection? Can you find strength in my strength rather than feeling diminished by it? This reflection is the source of the perceived difficulty. It is difficult to want a mirror if you are unprepared for what you might see in it. It is easier to want to portrait a still and curated image whose purpose is adornment. Her autonomy reflects his own. Her peace reflects his chaos or his own centeredness. Her ambition reflects his support or his competition. There is nowhere to hide in the clear light of this mutual gaze. This is why the transition feels so seismic. It transforms relationship from a transaction, the exchange of pursuit for possession, into an ongoing dialogue of mutual recognition. It demands that both individuals stand in their own authenticity and have the courage to see and be seen fully. The difficulty then is not in her nature, but in the formidable and beautiful challenge of that clear, shared reflection, which calls for a level of presence and self-awareness that the old game of art to get never required. The word difficult is a curious and revealing choice. It hangs in the air, often laden with a sigh of frustration, a label of inconvenience. But when we pause to truly examine what this difficulty represents in the context of a modern woman, we find its meaning transformed entirely. It is not the difficulty of caprice or intentional obstruction. It is the profound and resonant difficulty of authenticity. It is the beautiful, challenging complexity of a full human being who has chosen wholeness over simplicity. This difficulty is the natural consequence of a life lived with interiority and purpose. It is the sound of a soul that refuses to be compressed into a more convenient shape. Consider the architecture of such a life. This is a woman who wants things not in a grasping sense, but as declarations of her existence. She wants her career not as a hobby or a stopgap, but as a channel for her passion and a testament to her competence. This desire creates schedules, demands focus, and requires a partner who sees her ambition not as a rival for her attention, but as a sacred part of her identity. She wants her peace, a non-negotiable sanctuary within herself. This means she guards her energy. She says no to drain and drama, and she prioritizes solitude that replenishes her. To someone seeking constant availability, this can feel like a wall when it is, in fact, the foundation of her strength. She wants her changing mind, the right to evolve, to learn, to outgrow opinions and even relationships that no longer serve the person she is becoming. This flexibility can be misread as inconsistency when it is the very pulse of growth. She wants friendships that are deep and sustaining, recognizing that a romantic partnership, however profound, cannot be the sole vessel for every emotional and intellectual need. This expansive heart can feel like a dilution of devotion rather than the mark of a rich and multifaceted life. Most fundamentally, she wants a love that does not ask her to shrink. She will not willingly amputate parts of herself to fit a prefabricated space. She brings her full height, her full voice, her full history, and her full vision for the future to a dynamic seeking a seamless fit. This full stature can feel inconvenient. It requires adjustment, accommodation, and the bending of old expectations. This is the essence of the so-called difficulty. It is the difficulty of a masterpiece which demands contemplation and understanding versus a poster which is easily acquired and requires only a blank wall. It is the difficulty of a rich, layered novel compared to a simple slogan. She has read the ancient script that instructed her above all else to be lovable, to be agreeable, to be easy, and she has consciously, courageously set it aside. In its place, she has chosen the far more demanding script of being real. And real things, true things, powerful and vibrant and nuanced things are never easy. They are not fast food, they are a feast. They cannot be consumed quickly and without thought. They demand a participant, not just a consumer. They require an appetite for substance, a palate able to discern complexity, and the patience to savor. The difficulty, therefore, is not a flaw in her design. It is the signature of her integrity, the audible hum of a life operating at its highest and most authentic frequency. It is the very proof that she is no longer a product for consumption, but a person offering the rare and formidable gift of her true self. This is not a story of decline, not a wistful sigh for a bygone era of simpler romantic equations. The transition from a state of being hard to get to one perceived as difficult to want is not a failure of femininity or a loss of some essential charm. It is, in fact, the precise opposite is the roaring triumph of personhood over persona. It is the victory of an authentic self over a socially constructed role. To frame it as anything less is to misunderstand the monumental shift that has taken place in the very architecture of a woman's soul. The old paradigm required her to outsource her primary relationship, to locate her worth and her sense of direction in the eyes and the approval of another. Her compass was external, her path determined by the destination she was supposed to represent for someone else. That was the compact of being hard to get, a strategic performance where the ultimate goal was to be selected, to be validated by the act of acquisition. Now the compass is internal. The most important relationship a woman now nurtures is the one she has with her own soul. This is the quiet, revolutionary act at the heart of everything. She consults herself first. She builds a life not as a placeholder waiting for a main character to arrive, but as the main character in a story she is actively writing, day by day, choice by choice. Her worth is an internal calculation, a sum total of her integrity, her resilience, her kindness, and her accomplishments. It is no longer a fluctuating stock price on the market of romantic desirability. This fundamental reorientation changes everything. It means her choices in partnership are no longer acts of acceptance. It's that of saying yes to an offer that meets a minimum societal standard. They are acts of profound discernment, of asking whether a potential partner and the life he offers is compatible with the life she has already lovingly and painstakingly built for herself. The question that now guides her is not the anxious, whispered plea of, do you want me? That questioned her fate in another's hands and made her happiness contingent upon his verdict. That question belonged to the era of the prize, the object, the destination. The new question born of this hard one personhood is powerful and clear. Do I want this? It is an active, sovereign inquiry. It evaluates not just the person before her, but the entire ecosystem of a potential partnership. Does this connection honor my peace? Does it stimulate my intellect? Does it leave room for my dreams? Does it encourage my growth? Or does it ask me to park my true self at the door? This is the question of an architect, not a tenant.
It is the question of someone who owns the land and is considering what to build upon it, with whom. This shift represents the greatest possible success. It means women have moved from seeking permission to live to granting themselves the authority to thrive. They have exchanged the fragile power of being chosen for the unassailable power of choosing. The perceived difficulty is simply the visible edge of this self-possession, the natural boundary that emerges when a woman truly knows, that she is already home. The search is no longer for someone to complete her, but for someone courageous and interesting enough to share the magnificent, complete space she has already built. The journey is not one of simply shedding old rules, but of consciously writing new ones for oneself. This act of self-authorship is the very source of a woman's modern strength. and it is precisely what is misunderstood as mere difficulty. For a young woman stepping into this new paradigm, the cultural noise can be deafening. There will be voices, often well-meaning, that pathologize her standards as too high, her focus as too narrow, her self-sufficiency as a barrier to love. They will suggest that her authenticity is a form of rigidity, that her wholeness is an impediment to connection. It is crucial, now more than ever, for her to understand that this perceived difficulty is not a flaw to be corrected. It is her integrity speaking. That internal voice that questions, that pauses, that says no to what feels diminishing, and yes only to what feels expansive. That is the guardian of her sovereign self. Protecting that integrity is not an act of hostility toward partnership. It is the prerequisite for any partnership that could possibly be worthy of her. To compromise it is to build a relationship on a foundation of sand. On the ghost of the person she pretended to be, she must learn to wear her so-called difficulty as a badge of honor, the armor that protects the soft, vital truth of who she is. It is the boundary that makes genuine intimacy possible, for there can be no true closeness without a defined self to be closest to. Simultaneously, this new landscape invites a profound and necessary evolution in the men who wish to be partners within it. For the man who is ready to move beyond the antiquated script of pursuit and capture, the invitation is both daunting and magnificent. The call is to shift his entire perspective. He must learn to see her perceived difficulty, not as a series of obstacles on a track designed for his victory, but as a compelling invitation to a deeper, more substantial form of humanity. It is an invitation to shed the exhausting performance of the conqueror and step into the grounded, rewarding role of a true companion. This requires a fundamental recalibration of desire itself. The goal ceases to be about overcoming resistance and becomes about earning resonance. It is no longer about convincing her to say yes, but about transforming himself into a man for whom her authentic, unfiltered yes would be a natural and mutual flowering. This means developing the capacity to find inspiration in her ambition, rather than threat, to see her independence not as a lack of need, but as a choice she makes from a place of strength. A choice that allows what she gives next to be a gift, not a requirement. It asks for emotional fluency, for the courage to look into the clear mirror she holds up, and to engage in the ongoing work of self-reflection it demands. This evolution is the pathway from a transactional model of relationship, which was ultimately about acquisition, to a transformational model, which is about mutual growth. It recognizes that the richest connections are not forged when one person wins the other, but when two whole people choose to build a bridge between their complete and independent worlds. The reward for this courage is immeasurable, a partnership free of pretense, a love that is chosen daily by two people who see each other fully and are not diminished, but enlarged by what they see. The journey requires a powerful internal renaming. We must actively dismantle the language of lack implied in the phrase, difficult to want, and replace it with the language of undeniable presence. This is not a semantic game, it is a psychological and spiritual reclamation. To be called difficult is to be framed as a problem, a complication in an otherwise straightforward path. This framing serves the old narrative, suggesting that a woman's value is still tied to her palatability, her ease of integration into an existing script. We must reject this vocabulary entirely. The shift is not toward difficulty, it is toward substance. A woman who knows herself is not difficult, she is substantial. She is not complicated, she is complex. She is not withholding, she is whole. This wholeness naturally commands a different kind of engagement. It requires more than a glance, it demands a gaze. It asks for more than a surface-level appreciation. It calls for a deep and respectful recognition. Therefore, the accurate description is not that we have become difficult to want, but that we have become impossible to ignore. Our full humanity, once suppressed for the comfort of others, now occupies space audibly and visibly. We are no longer whispering our presence from the edges of our own lives. We are speaking it from the center. We have ceased to be a pleasant diversion in someone else's story and have become the authors of our own. This makes us a truth, and truths by their very nature are not always comfortable, but they are essential. They are not always easy, but they are real.
And reality in all its textured, demanding, glorious form is what we have chosen. We are not a problem to be solved. We are a presence to be reckoned with, and that reckoning is the beginning of all authentic connection. And so we arrive here at the heart of the matter, not with a question, but with an answer that has been echoing in our choices, our voices, and our quiet revolutions. We did not lose our way in becoming real. We found it. We traded the borrowed power of the chase for the unshakable power of self-possession. We exchanged the fragile title of prize for the sovereign title of author. The journey from being hard to get to being labeled difficult to want was never a descent. It was an ascent, a climb out of a beautifully decorated box and into the boundless sky of our own becoming. Yes, to the unprepared eye, a full-grown tree is more difficult to handle than a delicate potted seedling. Its roots are deep and unyielding. Its branches cast a wider shadow. It cannot be easily moved to suit another's garden design. But that is not a flaw. It is the evidence of life, of strength of a mature and thriving existence. So let us retire the old lexicon of lack. Let us silence any whisper that calls a woman's wholeness a difficulty. For what we are witnessing, what we are living, is not a story of becoming less wanted, but of becoming more real. We have moved from being a destination on someone else's map to being cartographers of our own world. And in that world, the ultimate connection is not found in being easily acquired. It is forged in the courageous mutual recognition of two complete universes, choosing to align their constellations. We have not become difficult to want, my friends. We have simply and irrevocably become impossible to ignore.